Hey, welcome everybody. So I really hope you're enjoying the day so far. We're only a couple of hours in. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you so much for turning up to this session. I'm really excited about this session. We've got four incredibly colourful and fantastic panelists to talk to you. So the story goes, Robin Hood, Emperor Norton, Mina Harker, and a New York City drag queen. It kind of sounds like the beginning of a really bad joke. But actually, our guests on this panel are deadly serious about their craft, and they're here to share with you how their character-based tours are putting them, and in some cases their cities, on the map. Now, our panel today has a wealth of experience working in their home cities as their chosen characters. So just like quickly to introduce them to you. So first of all, we have from my hometown of Nottingham, probably just a couple of miles up the road, Robin Hood, also known as Dede. We're delighted to introduce TripAdvisor's #1 rated attraction in our city, the Robin Hood Town Tour. So Robin Hood is actually Dede and been guiding tourists around our city for a couple of decades and gives an in-depth historical exploration into the myth and folklore that make up the persona that we all know as Robin Hood. The Emperor Norton tells a fascinating story of a real-life historical character who declared himself the Emperor of the United States without any mandate or vote. Kind of sounds familiar. And the Emperor now delivers I'm allowed to say that because I'm not American. The Emperor now delivers historical tours of San Francisco. And Emperor is also known as Joseph. So thank you for joining us, Joseph.
Indeed, thank you.
And we have Mina Harker of the Dracula book fame. Mina also operates in San Francisco, giving vampire tours of the city and regaling her guests with facts and stories of San Francisco. And Mina also goes by the day name of Kitty. So welcome, Kitty. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have Dede, also known as Stephen, who is a New York City drag queen, conducting walking tours of all things fabulous in fashion, culture, and fun around New York City, and also telling a really important tour story about the drag queen story of New York and the history, which is really, really fun and interesting. So thank you very much for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time and your expertise that you're about to share with us. So, excuse me. First question to Dede, please. So when you first started, how much did when you first started doing tours as Robin Hood, how much did your chosen persona help you, or did it actually hinder you in terms of you starting up your Robin Hood Town Tour?
Well, there's a few things here. I've been doing the Robin Hood Town Tour for 10 years now, but I've been Robin Hood for 25 years. But when I first came to Nottingham as a young man looking for work on the medieval scene, it was the Robin Hood, that's where the money was. Nottingham had failed as a city to realise that character. So I was doing banquets at the tales of Robin Hood all the time I was researching the character. But as I researched the character, I discovered how great the city was. So I had to invent another character to tell other stories of the city. So initially, Robin Hood was, well, that's a springboard for my success, and I'm building another character off the back of that as well. So, on one hand, Robin Hood was great. On the other hand, it was too limiting for the wider story of Nottingham as well. But, it's my job as an artist to craft this and present it to people in a way that they understand, in a way that flies the flag of the city, in a way that inspires them. And I've nailed it.
You have, and I've been on your town tour, and it's fantastic. Kitty, now when we spoke a few weeks ago, you've got a fantastic story about how you kickstarted your business and the PR work that you put into, and the trick that you had in grabbing journalists' attention. Would you mind sharing that story with us?
Yes, that's a really fun story. When I started the Vampire Tour of San Francisco, I had no idea how I was going to get it known so that people can start coming. And I thought, well, the first thing you really have to do is make friends with the press. But how do you do that? So I thought about it and I thought, well, maybe before the tour actually opens, I should have a press night. And that would only include members of newspapers, magazines, or TV, whoever I could get. And I thought, well, start with the newspapers. So I thought, well, if they get an invitation to another walking tour in the city, they're going to say, no thanks, and just throw it away. So I figured that the invitation couldn't come from me. And I thought, but who else could it come from? I'm the only one in the company. And I thought about it, and I thought, okay, what's the tour about? Perfect. The invitation came from Count Dracula. And I sent it to 30 newspapers around the Bay Area. And I got 11 that night. And I was thrilled because I got the Chronicle, the Bay Guardian, the Examiner, SF Weekly, you know, all the main newspapers came. And the man from the Bay Guardian told me after, he said, when I saw your invitation, I looked at the envelope because I had put a sealing wax D on the envelope to seal it. And he said, I looked at that and I thought, what in the world is this? And he said, I opened it up. And when I saw who that invitation was from, I almost fell out of my chair. And he said, I just wanted you to know that the invitation and the envelope are in a frame on my desk. So my
Brilliant.
goofy little idea worked.
Brilliant. I love that, leveraging the myth of the character to garner attention. I think that's genius. Well done for that. Joseph, you are now a well recognized figure around the streets of San Francisco. But was it like that to start with? How did you get going?
Well, decided that I wanted to do a historical walking tour, and because of my acting background, wanted to do it as a character from San Francisco history. Initially, I was going to be Mark Twain, but later decided upon Emperor Norton, and that was totally the right decision because people here are really glad to see this person walking the streets again. He was a very beloved figure, revered, and it just seemed to fill a need that nobody knew was there. And because of that, I started getting a lot of press, and people just love seeing me walk around in this character. So that's really helped my tour.
People want to believe in these things, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They do.
So that's been a real help with, obviously, Robin Hood, world famous.
I wanted to believe in Robin Hood, Aid, and I have to tell you, I was equally amazed and equally disappointed at the end of your tour, because I was amazed by your tour and the skill, but disappointed that Robin Hood wasn't actually a real person. But
well,
but I loved it nonetheless. Dede, looking fabulous, darling. Thank you very much. How did you get started?
Well, I'm a new tour company, so the thing is that I really am inspired by these stories. I had this bit of idea because I tend to love to perform and entertain, but it doesn't tend to be lip syncing. But I love history and I love knowledge and I love what that gives to people. So when people are on my tour, they always are like, oh my gosh, I never knew that happened in New York City. I never knew that this person actually was around here. I never knew that this place that's totally gentrified now used to be like the lowest people used to kind of live here. Not low as in just economically wise. And New York has a really rich history. I mean, there's something that has really permeated like the psyche of what people think New York is. And I have to say, drag is kind of what most people think New York is at times. It is like a costume, but why not?
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So when you got started, did you face any barriers on the street? Does being a character help you create great relationships with your vendors and the people that help you facilitate your tour, or was it a hindrance?
At first it was like, I felt like when I reached out to people, like without all this on, people were like, but then when I came up to them and there was all this on, they're like, oh, I really love what you're doing. I think it's really great. I think it's really quite forwarding. And also it opens up a different world to them of what they think drag is. And also not just drag, but what they believe is a part of New York City. Because when you go to New York City, most people go to Statue of Liberty, Times Square, and whatever, but there's not like a lot of fun in those places. I live in New York City and they're kind of a pain in the butt to be in. But when you go to these places like Lower East Side and West Side and go to fashion walks and you do things that are a little bit more like the locals do, that just really pulls people in. And they remember that more than saying, oh yeah, I went to Statue of Liberty once. That was okay. You know? Yeah.
Okay.
Come to another queen.
And Joseph, you've managed to get some amazing publicity, which I think most of us would give our right arms for, by wearing feathers in your hat. Not just by that, but by being an amazing tour guide, but the fact that you're a character. So tell us a little bit about some of the incredible PR that you've had.
I've gotten all sorts of newspaper articles, TV segments. I've been featured on the History Channel as myself as a historian, not as the emperor. In fact, they did an episode about the emperor. They had somebody else play him, and that was kind of strange. But it just seems to fall my way. I don't go out and seek it. But because I'm this character who's beloved and flamboyant, it just happens. And to answer your question as well about whether it helped or hindered, it's helped tremendously. I've had very few problems. In fact, it opens doors for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Kitty, you've apart from your opening kind of publicity stunt, what publicity you had since?
Oh, the press has gone nuts over this silly thing. I mean, I've been on HBO, Showtime, the History Channel, the Travel Channel, and CBS National News. So, you know, that little stunt just opened all these doors for me. And the free publicity has been unbelievable because there's no way I could pay for this. You know, that would cost a fortune. And luckily, it's like they said in Gypsy, you got to have a gimmick, and they love the gimmick.
Without a doubt, if there's a truth behind it, it's going to work, isn't there? Won't it? If there's a truth behind it, it will work.
Oh yeah, people are amazed at how much truth is in the script of the tour, because they expect me to just say, oh, a vampire lives there, another one lives there. You know, they don't really know what to expect. And I've had history classes come on the tour, a private tour, as a class outing. Because the teacher took the tour and was shocked at how much truth was in it. And yes, adding truth into fiction, oh yeah, that's where it's at.
I think that's really powerful, and I'd like to expand on that point actually, because it was kind of linked to my next question, which is, you all deliver a very credible tour experience, and how has that kind of credibility and that almost, I guess, surprise amongst some of your customers when they take a tour with, you know, Mina Harker or Robin Hood, and then their expectations are kind of smashed, but actually far surpassed in terms of the level of historical knowledge and depth and stories that you tell. How powerful has that kind of ability to transform the impression of your customers been?
It's amazing because people love true history, especially people in, well, I mean, other cities too, but people of San Francisco love their history. And I've had little kids come on the tour because it's suitable for all ages. And they ask the cutest questions. And I have to answer them in character as Mina. And that's a blast.
Cool. And Ade, what about yourself?
Pardon?
Sorry, I was listening to the previous talker. What was the question in a nutshell?
So how powerful is the fact that you can kind of smash people's expectations and their
right.
You know, in terms of them expecting a different type of delivery to what you actually deliver? Okay,
well, many people, it's unfortunate in the modern day that Robin Hood has been relegated to becoming a cartoon character, men in tights, etc. And that's through lack of care and attention from the powers that be. So my endeavor is based on 25 years of working on the streets, as it were. And this ain't no men in tights. This is the truth behind the legend of Robin Hood. It's using storytelling as the mechanism which created this legend. It's using that as the medium for people to understand the legend. And it becomes a springboard in people's imaginations to pursue this ideological hero. So this is a very transpersonal thing going on for me. And it's, you know, with the audience, the way it really inspires them. Because Robin Hood's all about the dream of a better world. He's a symbol of hope. And we all want this in our lives, don't we? Yeah, I'm finding that the magic is created on the streets through my work. And the final thing on this point is that it's not just about dressing up, because in the rest of my life, I've been a ranger for Sherwood Forest as well. I do a lot of projects of social, environmental, and cultural regeneration. So it's in word, thought, and deed that I am Robin Hood. And there's a real truth behind that. And that's why it works. No one else has brought this character to life in the way I have, or the way I am doing. I am Robin Hood.
We'll take your word for it. Dede, how have your customers reacted to you, and kind of how have you seen that change from when they first meet you to actually when they realize that, actually, you know what you're talking about?
I think it's a real interesting point that Robin Hood, I'm going to call you Robin Hood, brought up. Is more like, one person had asked me, like, well, is this like a gimmick of RuPaul's Drag Race and all those things coming through it? But there's a lot of work behind the history of it, because I know New York City has a history, but like every time I've been on a tour that's here is like basically been more LGBTQ focused. And I thought that I would work that way at first because I thought I would love it. But then I realized there's much bigger of a story here about people who are countercultures and punks and rebels and all these crazy people who moved to New York City for just one thing, and they wanted to be themselves. And that's like the main focus on it. As far as people on this tour is concerned, they've loved it. We have this pit stop kind of on the way, and it's right in front of Stonewall, in front of Christopher Street. It's in Christopher Street Park, and there's another drag queen singing there. And we have a cocktail, and we have a talk, and we have a sing, and sometimes they lip sync on it, and they just get involved with it. And so most of the time, the experience that people take away from it is like, oh my gosh, I was just led around this city with the drag queen, and also I got out of my comfort zone a little bit, and I got to be myself instead of just this always going to work all the time, 9 to 5, whatever it is. It just makes it feel more like a community than just like someone coming on a tour. Also, since I have the story aspect, it kind of puts it into context and makes the whole thing feel like original, honest, loving community that everybody wants to be a part of. So
truthful. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Dede. And Joseph, the reaction from your customers when you go into the story is slightly different from me. If it's not different for you at all, but your character is 100% accurate in terms of the what you present as a character was actually a real person, and the things that happened actually happened. How amazed are people when they kind of hear some of the things that went on?
Pretty amazed. I mean, a lot of people come to the tour thinking that this is 100% a work of fiction, that I made this person up and they never really existed, but he did. And I've made myself look more like him through my beard, my costume, hair, and all that. I found that people tend to fall into 3 categories on my tour, and that seems to be shifting a little bit. Either they know exactly who I am and treat me accordingly, as they should, or they don't know who I am and want to find out more, or they just dismiss it completely. Now, the people that dismiss it have become a very, very small group of people. But you got to have the knowledge to back that up, and that's something that I'm very obsessed with, and I'm always increasing. You got to know your story for people to believe it. And by the end of the tour, they're all believers, which is great.
Yeah. So, I mean, nice segue actually into kind of the next point, which is all around storytelling. And we've got a session on that at some point today, tomorrow. I should know the schedule, but forgive me, I don't. I mean, telling a story for any guide doing any type of tour is absolutely paramount, and the ability to tell that story, whether it's a fairly short story or whether it's weaved in throughout the whole day or the whole week or 2 weeks or whatever that length of tour may be. How have you found being able to tell the story as a character? Has that helped the storytelling process for you, or was it more difficult because you were conscious of being in character and delivering all the aspects of a great, storytelling technique? Aid, you'll go to you for that one, please, mate.
Okay, well, what we have with my tour is a medieval character telling the story of a modern city, or showing people around a modern city. So what I'm doing is it's using the backdrop of the city to tell the chronological narrative of the evolution of the legend of Robin Hood, with the city as a backdrop. So sometimes I wear 2 hats. Sometimes I'm obviously dressed as Robin Hood, but it's an ambiguous character. I'm playing games. I could be a Robin Hood, I could be a storyteller, but sometimes I'll speak to people matter of fact, you know, about the modern city or whatever. And other times I'll dive into the storytelling and really capture people in the palm of my hand with a sort of a powerful storytelling. But it's that playing with the two things, the tour guiding and the storytelling, really creates the magic. It's a catalyst for the magic in myself, and that transposes to the audience as well. And like other people have said, you know, by the end of this tour, people believe in Robin Hood. You know, whether they came thinking, oh, he's just a, you know, as made up character or whatever, or as a cartoon character. At the end of it, they're impressed by the importance of this cultural character. And so, I'm playing lots of different games: live interpretation, storytelling, and tour guiding.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And
hybrid.
It is very hybrid. And Kitty, how have you managed to translate these stories via your character?
That's been really fun because I want people to believe that I am Mina Harker, which of course is the main thing in acting, is you not only portray that character, you become that character. And the tour is autobiographical. Mina tells her stories that happened to her at each of the stops. And if nothing happened directly to her, she's talking about the vampire stories of that stop. But Mina is intertwined throughout the entire tour. And in the very beginning, I tell how I got to San Francisco, why Dracula brought me there. And through the end, at the very last stop, I talk about how he came to rescue me there. And so being I'm going to use the word real character. Well, she's a real character, that's for sure. But people know her and they know who Mina is. And I think that helps a lot because they know what to expect. She became one of Dracula's brides, the main bride. And they know that going into it. And so they expect to hear about her throughout the tour, which they do. And I think they really like that, especially intertwined with the true history. Then I love watching the audience at certain parts of the tour because there are certain areas where I'll be talking and I'll say something and I look at certain people because they looked confused. Like, is that real? Is that for sure? And sometimes they'll ask each other, they'll say, is that right? You know, and I just love that, especially the vampire parts. They get so sucked into it that they're asking, well, did that really happen to Dracula? Or did Mina really do that? And I go, oh, good, I got him. You know?
Excellent. So I have just 5 minutes left, and I'm going to just introduce another question. Actually, what I'd love to know is for many tour guides and tour directors out there at the moment who have, as we all know, we've not had our best year, and are looking to kind of maybe do something a bit different in 2021, thinking about maybe stepping out on their own. And you might be sat there thinking, actually, you know what, I could do this. I know my subject area brilliantly. I could portray this type of character. What kind of advice would you give them very quickly, Dede?
Oh my gosh. Well, in drag, I've been doing drag since 2012. And so I feel like when it comes to drag, like putting on a character more or less, I actually think that drag is a part of me anyway. Dede would not be here without Steven. So it's kind of like in cahoots. However, I would also say, like, practice makes perfect. That's the best way to say. It's like makeup. You just gotta keep working until you feel like this is what I would like it to look for. I mean, it took me a long time to make this face like this. I mean, believe me. And as far as the words that you say and the things that are on the tour that you're giving to, knowing what you're saying and the story you're saying and delivering it in a clear, distinct message is always quite key. And that's kind of in tune with who Dede is. If I fumble along the way, you know what? I'm a drag queen. Whatever. We just say whatever we want to say. And we're experiencing how it experiences it. Like I would love people to take away from this when they're in New York City to entrench themselves with like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening around me and I'm in it. versus just like hearing stories and walking along, which is fantastic, believe me. But like, there's something about walking down Gay Street and dancing to music. Like I have a little musical box I play for people, and they just dance to Girls Just Want to Have Fun, because that was shot on that street. So having that own moment is something that's really great. So being in character is kind of like knowing your vibe, I guess the word is. I also know fashion, so knowing your vibe is really important.
Cool. Okay, thank you. And Joseph, what are some key tips that you might give somebody who wants to kind of go down this path that you've been on?
I would say do the research, get the knowledge, learn your stories, but then tell them in a relatable way. I think that's what really helps a lot with me, is that people can actually relate to the stories once I've told them, because then they become, because I'm relating them from a first person perspective. The best advice I could give, however, on how to be a good historical walking tour guide, take an improv class, because you never know what you're going to encounter out there and what you're going to have to react to. And I'm very thankful that in my college days, I took those classes and got those skills.
Okay, that's some great advice. Just slightly different question now, just to finish it off. When you're out on the streets and you are delivering your tours as the characters that you're delivering in, how do the public take to you? Ade, what have you experienced? We both know what Nottingham can be like sometimes. What have you experienced?
Nottingham's a great city, but it is it's quite a hard underbelly to it, you know. So initially, a lot of people were great with it. There's Robin Hood, right on, well done, mate, whatever. But a few people were sort of a bit disparaging, a bit stupid about it. But over the years, there's Robin Hood. He's on the streets. Great job, man. So there's a lot of respect from the people seeing Robin Hood knocking around the modern city. That's what people want to see, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Kitty, how's your reception on the streets been?
Fantastic. Much better than I expected. I've actually had people come out while I was doing the tour with a bunch of roses and give them to me, and just totally interrupt the tour and say, I just wanted to thank you for bringing so much fun to our neighborhood. And people come out all the time, and they'll drive by and say, hey, have fun. It's a wonderful tour, and the people of San Francisco have just completely embraced this. It's been so fun for me.
Is that the same for you, Joseph? Because San Francisco is kind of known for that city for people, taking their clothes off, not necessarily dressing up. So have you had a good reception?
Absolutely. The love and adulation I experience when I'm out there is probably the best part of this. One of my favorite TripAdvisor reviews really summed it up. They said, it was fun to walk behind me to see people either greet me as I should be greeted or look away in horror. I'll take both.
Brilliant. And Dede, you must have had some interesting interactions on the streets of New York, I imagine.
Life is always a parade in New York City, my darling, especially with your drag queen with you. So it's very fun to sit there and have people come behind me or walk with me and just get as much love and attention, even if they don't like it so much. Whatever happens, I'll make sure that they feel like I'm more concerned, like, let's make them feel special. And this takes 3 hours to do. So whatever. It's like,
brilliant. Brilliant. Well, listen, sadly, we're out of time. We could listen to you guys talk all day. It's amazing. I know you're all open to being connected with post this. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everybody.